We're in a moment where compliance isn't just about meeting requirements, it's about keeping pace with rapid regulatory change while enabling sustainable growth. Well, with that, I'm excited to have Grace Brasington, the Executive Managing Director of Asurity Advisors, with us today. Grace, thanks for coming on. I want to get right into this. This is going to be a fun conversation, and it's kind of in preparation for your upcoming event forum, which we'll talk about shortly. But with that opening as the theme, my first question to you is just tell me what you guys are hearing and what you're seeing in the market today.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you so much, Brian, for having me with you today. As I navigate this environment in the industry right now, it's all about doing more with less, being more efficient, being more effective, looking at my end-to-end processes, looking at my data. There's a lot of focus right now on state activity. How do I meet the state requirements and the patchwork that exists in terms of states? And how do I maintain my competitiveness? How do I stay ahead? So I'm seeing a huge focus right now, more than ever, on process and data.
I love that. And just to double click a little bit, when you talk about, the everyone's focused on efficiencies and their cost to manufacture whatever it is they're manufacturing. I'm learning, in my role at MISMO and getting involved with you all and with the CSBS and others, it's not just about the lender. The lender's one component. It's you guys as a service provider, a technology platform provider, and it's the regulator. All of us are faced with the same challenges of having to do more with less. And that wasn't really a question as much as it was a statement. It's interesting to me that we're at this point in time where everyone's really faced with almost the same problem. And to the extent we can come together with a solution, I think it'll be pretty powerful. So I want to kind of now talk about the governance see, I told you I was going to get this wrong. I want to talk about the governance implications. I can't even get the words out today. So you talked about, the need for more efficiency, the cost to manufacture. How does that factor into governance?
As you said, Brian, we really are at an inflection point in the industry where all the key stakeholders are having to come together. So you've got risk and compliance, and that's table stakes. But you also have the data people, because with AI and some of the transformations that are happening right now, if your data isn't good, your AI is not going to be good. You've got business leaders, and they're all coming together because they have to. In the past, if volume was high and the revenue was coming in, nobody had to take a step back and look at process or technology or improvements because the money was coming in. Now we're in a period of time where the stakeholders have to come together and figure out, what does this new normal look like? And how do I look at my process, my technology, and how do I be competitive and cost effective for the future?
So, we are at that inflection point, as you say. So we're closing down. I mean, we're almost, 2 weeks into March, which will wrap up Q3 here shortly for 2026. And as you think about mortgage compliance specifically, do you think we're is it more about enforcement or infrastructure in your mind?
Well, I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. I mean, the regulatory intensity moves in cycles and it's quick. The mortgage rules have been stable, but what we've got to do is evolve and, automate, reduce the friction that exists, build scalable, efficient systems that are going to support growth. So now's the time to ensure that the infrastructure can support growth in the future. The same investments that enable growth can position institutions to withstand regulatory scrutiny and enforcement when the pendulum swings back, and it's going to swing back, and enforcement priorities shift again. So it's about enabling growth and supervision readiness, and it goes hand in hand.
So from your seat and where you guys kind of sit in the ecosystem, what do you see that's changing right now in mortgage governance that leaders cannot afford to ignore?
So supervisory expectations are evolving. Now you've got, the state activity. Technology can't be peripheral anymore to compliance. And we're seeing a compliance, technology, and business and data stakeholders coming together in a way that we really haven't seen in the past. So for years and years, people have been talking about, oh, this technology is going to do it. And we've been talking about AI for many, many, many years. But up until now, when we are forced to really take a hard look in the mirror and say, how can I improve? How can I get better? Now we're moving from more of a checklist driven model to a process, a systemic tech enabled model. And institutions that kind of do that step back are going to position themselves better, whether the next cycle brings growth or shifting enforcement priorities or both.
Yeah, I love that. So you guys do an event that I'll be attending for the first time, and as I'm learning about it, I got to say I'm really excited to be in the room and learn from the folks that you're going to have on stage. I'm very fortunate that you all invited me to speak for a little bit as well, and I'm looking forward to that. But let's talk about the 2026 forum and specifically what makes forum different from other compliance conferences that are out there.
Well, what I love about the forum, first of all, we are thrilled to have you there. Andy Sandler, our founder, is excited about you and Brandon and y'all being the keynote for us. And it's in New Orleans, so it's going to be great. But it's an event focused on current and future business risk and compliance needs, and we're going to be talking about, really, frankly, the topics that everybody's talking about right now. It's AI, it's crypto, it's state activity, it's the risk and compliance landscape. It's about affordability. That's a big issue from a mortgage perspective right now. It's about data, it's about third-party risk. So all of these items are going to be things that we're going to really talk about and focus on. We're basically going to be talking about the issues that are facing financial institutions and developing an agenda to enable these conversations and, frankly, great networking opportunities so that people can share information with one another.
I'm always curious, especially now in my new role and having, we host 3 events a year with MISMO, and this is the first time I've been in a role that's this close to building content, and I'm always reminded by our team, remember who our audience is. So with that, as you guys build out, as you built Forum and build the content for it, who have you really built it for? What are the roles that you build your content for?
So it's the risk and compliance leaders, it's business stakeholders who are looking at what does the new normal look like, and how do I ensure that what I'm trying to do from a product and a service perspective aligns with risk and compliance objectives and needs. It's the data folks. So now more and more I'm hearing from compliance and risk leaders, I need to have people on my team that have a data background, because if the business stakeholders are looking at technology and AI, I need to make sure that AI is going to be safe, that, I look at model risk considerations and those types of things. So this is all about a convergence and bringing everyone together in that regard.
And I love the term convergence and kind of looking through the agenda, and then obviously having an opportunity to prepare. And you mentioned Brandon, that's Brandon Milhorn, who's the CEO of Conference of State Bank Supervisors. Brandon represents the state regulators, right? So what do you see as the benefits of bringing current regulators, former regulators, compliance leaders, data experts, and innovators all into the same room together?
I think when you bring everyone together in that regard, your outcomes are going to improve. They always do. What MISMO did with CSBS in terms of, the MCD, I mean, that has been a challenge. How do you address all the different state requirements that exist? How do you make it usable in terms of the overall data itself so that the regulators can take a look at that and have a confidence level? And so standardization is the key. So that's just one example of what collaboration can do for the industry. And it's a great one.
It is a great one. It's one that I grasped right away as I came into the organization. It was like that tangible. I can put my hands on it as a former lender myself. I can rationalize, if I'm going to invest in MISMO, this benefit is going to more than, make up for or produce ROI based on my relative investment. So speaking of investment, and speaking of cost and managing expenses, I know lenders are really looking at all the things they send their teams to every year and kind of rationalize and justifying the cost. And so, as someone who is maybe watching this episode and wants to attend but needs to sell their boss on why this is important, what are some of the insights that attendees are going to be able to take back and then put into practice in their organizations?
So all the institutions talk about risks, but you also have to have a playbook. What am I going to do about it? And so it arms people with knowing here are the risks, but here's what others are doing to address those risks, from their perspective. And I think that kind of collaboration is very helpful, because if you can learn 4 or 5 things that you didn't learn walking into the conference that enables your institution to be a better institution, why wouldn't you do that?
That's
So
right.
the cost is one thing, but the reward is great in that regard.
Okay. And I've always felt as over my career, being in the room, being at conferences, listening to the content, it does allow you to maybe see around some corners that you otherwise, would be blind to and you'd be reacting to. And there's, no shortage of change that we're all facing. Can you give some examples of real supervisory change, and how organizations are navigating those today?
Well, there's 2 panels. I'm really excited about all of our content, but there's 2 panels that speak to this. So one of them is the State of the States, Diverging Paths in Financial Regulation. And the other is a panel on the debanking, balancing access and risk. And, so we're going to have at the State of the States panel representatives from Connecticut and New Jersey to talk about their efforts in financial services regulation. Because federal enforcement has been less potent in the last 18 months, there is an expectation that the state attorneys general and state regulators are going to fill the void. So there's going to be a discussion about that. Then on the debanking front, the president had a pretty significant executive order, which led to the Small Business Administration sending request letters to the SBA lenders relative to debanking. And then the OCC published a report on the status of their debanking investigations. These are real risks. Debanking, executive order, the activities with the states, and it's just a sample of the conversations we're going to be having at Forum.
Yeah, I would think, anybody that leads risk in a lending organization, really of any size, this is information you need to have, and you need to understand how it potentially impacts your organization. So you named a couple sessions that I think I agree with you. They're going to be key must see sessions. Are there any other key sessions that you'd like to highlight for our listeners?
So I'm moderating 2 sessions. One of them is with the risk officers of some large institutions like M&T, Frost, Apple, Boeing Credit Union. And we're going to be talking about, the compliance implications, the risk implications. We've got a session with Arvest Bank, Liberty, Cornerstone, and Stellar. They're all part of my risk panel. And then I've got my compliance panel. So I'm very, very excited about that, because everybody's kind of saying the same thing. It's all about efficiency, effectiveness. How do we do more with less? How do we leverage the data? What are we doing around standards? And then there are other sessions around fair lending compliance, debanking, CRA, sustainability, affordability. Many of our clients are saying, I'm evaluating fintech relationships in terms of partners. We're going to talk about the pitfalls and the opportunities associated with those relationships. So it's a pretty holistic agenda, stacked with a lot of great content.
I love when event organizers put practitioners on panels. So it's less about theory. It's more about this is the practice. This is a practice or a best practice. And um, it seems, those are, to me, those are some of the most valuable sessions at any conference, when I can learn from people that are actually doing the things they're talking about doing.
Absolutely. We try to do that with almost every one of our sessions. So we like to have the practitioners. Sometimes we have legal representation. We've got some great law firms that are going to be participating. Mitchell Sandler's going to be there. Troutman's going to be there. So we've got some phenomenal legal organizations that are going to also be part of it.
And by the way, for those that need or annually have continuing education requirements, they can also earn points towards those, right?
17 CRCM or CERP credits will be available. And if you need more than 17, we also have 2 days of content, the subsequent 2 days for Asurity Academy.
Love it. So before we get on, because I want to get your kind of check your pulse on the state of the industry in a minute. But before we do that, before we move off of forum, one sentence: why should people attend?
It's just an amazing networking opportunity to hear about the current issues and what your peers are doing.
Love it. Love it. So I want to pick your brain on what you guys are seeing as far as the state of technology across housing finance. We've talked a lot about data standards. Of course, Brandon and I are going to talk about, all things MCD from the stage at Forum. But yeah, what do you see, and what should we be thinking about as an industry as it relates to technology today?
The adoption of mortgage industry data standards, in my opinion, is no longer a nice to have. I believe it is a mission critical requirement for organizations looking to achieve maximum growth while maintaining or increasing efficiency. So, like I said, I'm so excited about the keynote, our founder, Andy Sandler, and the discussion that you're going to have with Brendan Milhorn. But attendees are going to learn more about the MCD, Data Standards Initiative. I have to congratulate you, Brian, and the work that you did with MISMO on this. You and CSBS have been the driving forces behind the creation of the MCD data standard. And the value of that, having consistent data standards, makes it easier. And when we reduce friction at the end of the day, my hope is it reduces cost. Because we are dealing with an affordability crisis right now as it relates to mortgage. I have a daughter who's 23 years old, and it's going to be very difficult for her to obtain a house one day. So the more we can reduce the friction, the more flexibility we can provide, the more we can embrace standards, the better. But the thing that I always hated when I had an iPhone and I had an upgrade was when they made me change out my charger or my other peripherals. It made me crazy, because I was like, why can't it just be the same? And it should be about flexibility. It should be about best of breed. And I believe that standardization is key to that. You can pick and choose the vendors that are doing a great job. You can exit those vendor relationships who are not doing a great job. And the vendors that embrace MISMO and standards, in my opinion, are embracing it because they're not afraid of the competition, because they know they're going to do a great job and they're going to provide a great service, and the clients are going to be happy with them.
Yeah, I love that. I just had a visual. You talk about when we get upgraded, when our phones upgrade, everybody has that drawer in their house with all the cords, right? You might see me write a LinkedIn post with a picture of my own drawer of cords, because that's a great visual for why standards matter, So I want to go back to Forum real quick, because I realized there was an area that we didn't touch on, which is you guys will have an exhibit area. And is that the place where we can go learn about how technologists are applying, solving some of these big problems, these big compliance problems with their platforms and programs? And then, you might go into a little bit about how Asurity really exists across the ecosystem.
Absolutely. So the exhibit hall is the opportunity for technology solutions from Asurity, our RegCheck and Propel product as examples, and our partners. You'll see Risk Exec, and Risk Exec is a phenomenal tool for fair lending and CRA, but it basically is about us and the partners demonstrating how effective use of data standards enables the creation of increasingly more powerful solutions to improve operational efficiency without sacrificing compliance by embedding real-time audit and analysis into the core infrastructure.
Love that. So let's shift a little bit to fair lending and specifically fair servicing. I'd really like to drill into that for a moment, and then maybe share with us some areas of fair lending risk that you foresee being of importance to our audience.
Well, there is a lot happening in fair lending. So you have algorithmic bias concerns have been around for a long time, but with the rapid deployment of AI across the industry as a whole, I think that's going to be a pain point for years to come. In a similar vein, digital redlining will likely see a lot more focus. So these two issues, algorithmic bias, digital redlining, move us into my third point in the state of fair lending, and that's model governance. The capabilities of modern models are amazing, and technology is advancing at a pace we've never seen before. But to that end, model governance only becomes more important. Appraisal discrimination and bias aren't going away anytime soon. For many loans to close, a human has to look at a home, has to compare it to comparable properties, and derive the value of the collateral based on a number of factors. And those factors must be clearly explainable and non-discriminatory.
Love it. Are you ready for the closing segment, Grace?
I hope so. I hope so.
I'm gonna hit you with a couple rapid fire questions. All right. So, biggest compliance shift that we're facing in 2026?
The race to adopt AI. It's going to challenge compliance leaders who can't lose sight of the regulatory obligations at the expense of new technology. And don't forget, AI is only as good as the data. So if you're not focusing on the data, I don't know that you're going to really be able to achieve the benefits of AI that you hope to.
Yeah, a lot of people think about automation or AI as the solution before they actually fix their foundation, whether it's data or their process. One risk that leaders should not lose sight of.
So the ACOA look back is 5 years. So it's longer than an administration. And regulators have long memories. So don't pull back on what you're doing from a compliance perspective because you think you can. Continue down the path that you're on because that look back period is 5 years and there will be a new administration.
Yeah, that's such a great reminder. What's one opportunity that leaders are missing today?
I think that lenders and leaders should really look at process. If you map your process and you take a look at your controls, you can see where there's redundancy in terms of controls. You can see where there are efficiency opportunities. You can also look at it from the standpoint of, can I do this as cost effectively as I want to? And if you can't, look at moving it. But if you don't look at the end-to-end process, if you don't look at the underlying data, you're missing out.
Love that. Grace, this has been awesome. I've learned a lot, as I usually do on these episodes. I want to thank you for that. I do want to just share real quick for the audience. We've been talking about the forum, right? 2026 forum, April 20th through the 22nd in New Orleans. If you go to the 2026, so the 2026forum.com, and we'll put a link in this episode as well, you can register there. And this is for risk, compliance, fair lending, CRA, business and data stakeholders, and frankly, more. And I would encourage any lender out there, any leader of a lender, to send someone from your team, maybe send multiple folks to this event. It's a sure to be a can't miss event and just loaded with actionable insights that you'll be able to take back into your business. Not just from a risk perspective. I always look at the other side of risk and compliance where there's opportunity, where you can actually create and grow your business in a safe and sound manner. With that, Grace, again, I want to thank you for spending some time with us on MISMO Mic'd Up. I look forward to being at the forum with you and your team, April 20th through the 22nd.
We're looking forward to having you, Brian, and thank you so much. It was a pleasure visiting with you and the audience today. Thank you.
Thank you. And for everybody else, come back next Friday for the next episode of MISMO Mic'd Up. Thanks, y'all.